Hey folks, today we're going to have a look at a problem with the buttons, the foot switches on the Pod HD500X. One of them is a bit worn out, it doesn't click very solidly anymore, so I'm going to attempt to swap my most used button, which is the one that's worn out, with one of the less used ones. So here's a look at the problem. So my foot switch 4 button, as you can hear, makes a click, and that one is functioning fine. My drive one I have on FS3, and that obviously is the one I use the most because it is worn out. Sometimes it doesn't want to engage properly and the click is worn out. So what I'm going to try to do is swap it with something like my foot switch 1, which I rarely ever use. So this one is probably pretty much brand new, and I'm going to attempt to swap those two. So let's have a look to see what's involved. To open up the pod, you're going to have to take off all the feet. So these little screws with the feet are what holds the back of the pod on. You're going to have to take off all 8 of them. So there's 3 on the top, 2 in the middle that hold a brace bracket on the inside, and 3 on the bottom. So once you have all 6 of those taken off, to get the back panel off, what you do is slide it to the right, then lift up this side here and slide it back over to the left a little bit, and that will allow you to take it off. And those middle 2 screws on the back panel, they attach to this. So that's the brace that sits on top of these little rubber feet or rubber pads, so you can see from the indents where to put that brace back when you put the pod back together later on. So the foot switches are on a separate little circuit board, and we'll have to take off this whole circuit board to get at it and do a little bit of soldering to swap out our couple of foot switches. So I'll take off the circuit board next. So now I have taken out the screws from the part that bolts each foot switch into the chassis of the pod. And so each foot switch has 2 screws. Once you've taken out each of those, then this whole circuit board section just kind of lifts right out. And next, I'm going to take out the screws from the 2 foot switches that I want to swap around, and then we'll get to the soldering. Here's what one of the foot switches looks like when it's taken out. Be careful because it's in pieces and they're not really attached. This is the plastic portion that will light up with the LED light. And the foot switch portion itself has a little spring and a little plastic pad that is not really attached. It will just kind of fall out if you're not careful, so don't lose these things. The parts that we're going to be trading around inside the board, where the problem is the actual little switch. So this one over here is the good one that I'm going to be moving over, and if you listen to it, you can hear it makes a solid click. This is the worn out one, and it makes no click. I can't actually even feel the button moving. It sort of feels like it's seized, and so that is the one that is kind of giving me problems. Occasionally you step on that foot switch and it just won't do much. So this is where the soldering comes in, and it's just this little portion that's going to be unsoldered at the back and ideally replaced. But if you don't have a replacement switch, then swapping it with one that you don't use very often would be another option, is what I'm doing here. Now, I know some of you might say, why don't you just reroute this internally so that you're using this one instead of that one? Well, it comes to placement. I've used it for years this way, and my foot is just used to going to that button for the drive. And plus it's in a more convenient spot. This one is right up against the that little rail that protects some of the buttons, and it's just a bit harder for me to hit on the fly. So this is where I prefer my drive button to be, so I'm going to try and swap them out now. So here's my favorite spot to do my soldering, above or on the stove with the lights and the fan on, so you get all that nasty soldering smoke not in your lungs, because that's not a good thing to breathe in. And here, just to make sure I've got the switches back in the right orientation. I put a little Sharpie black dot at the top of each switch so that when I swap them around, I don't turn them around in case that matters. So next, need to solder or warm up the 4 pins and try to get that switch out. So the switch is out, and that so far has been the trickiest part of this. What I had to end up doing was hold the soldering gun across 2 pins, so either the top 2 or the bottom 2. Oh, sorry, let me try and get the camera in the right spot here. So holding so that it touches 2 pins, and while those 2 pins are warming up, at first I had to get the plier and here and put some down pressure on the switch until there was enough of a space that I could get a knife point underneath the switch, and that way I could pry the switch down gently as I heated up 2 of the pins at a time. So once that pin was out, then I actually decided I'll go to my local computer shop and see if it's a generic enough type of switch that they would have any replacements, and turns out they did. So this one is, there's 2 types of switches. There's momentary and on-off, and this is an on-off switch. So they dug around and found a few used ones and just gave them to me for free. I did buy a new soldering gun, so I guess that was kind of nice of them. So now I've got 3 switches to try, and hopefully have some backup in case my other switches go. Now the back of it, if you can see there, you can sort of line up which is at least not side to side, but which is top and bottom, and the pins should only go into the slots one of 2 ways, just this way or that way. So you can't put it in sideways. So hopefully that doesn't matter. So I've bent the pins to line up with my with those floor slots there, and we're gonna solder this switch in. Let's see what happens. Okay, so now our new switch is in, and I've cleaned up the solder points here so that nothing overlaps. And something that, if you're skilled at soldering, you probably know way better ways to do this, but I found it much easier to clear out the solder from the points here before putting the new switch in, so that I could get all 4 pins in as far as possible. So I just heated up each hole and poked some of the solder through with a toothpick, kind of spun it around to get the extra solder out, so that I had them as empty as possible. Put the switch in as far as it would go, then fill the holes back up with solder, and just put some pressure on the back of the switch as I slowly just heated up the pins quickly from one to the other so that I could push the switch all the way in. So now we put it back together and see what happens. Now that I've got the switch back in place, something that might save you some headache if you do happen to have to try unsoldering and resoldering something, just put a couple of screws back into place before you do everything and just test it out. So we're going to flip this over and see if our switch is going to... Now that I've got the switch back in place, something that might save you some headache if you do happen to have to try unsoldering and resoldering something, just put a couple of screws back into place before you do everything and just test it out. So we're going to flip this over and see if our switch is going to behave itself. I'll power it on. And will it work? Voila. There we go. Our switch is happy, and now we can put all the rest of the screws back together, and away we go.